Margaret smoothly applauds my efforts. I smile timidly at their reaction.
You've come so far, Kika.
Margaret gazes at me fondly. Gaze back. I catch Margaret's eyes and we spend a moment sharing a gentle connection. For a brief moment, all of the troublesome circumstances seem to float away from our minds.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if you're new here. My name is Death by Pony. Today we're hopping back into Lake of Voices. Without further ado, let's hop in.
Leave me alone.
No, I will not leave you.
Margaret huffs, looking away again, only to properly glare.
Do you even know why I came out here? It wasn't as though I had anywhere important to be.
Then, why? Why would you risk this journey?
Surely you already know the heart of my distress. Haven't you ever considered what you would do if you weren't able to be a god?
She makes a point too good to dismiss, and I inwardly flinch when I consider it.
Yes. I originally sought this path not because I wished to protect others, but because I was concerned for my own self.
I don't blame you. If I had your coordination and ability, I would have learned to fight as well. As it stands, I cannot change what I am. The settlement I come from is small, barely staving off collapse, really. The same as your town. You don't have to tell me which it is. They are all that way. My only real skill is the knowledge I've worked so hard to obtain. But, of course, a tiny village full of starving hunter-gatherers doesn't have much use for someone well-versed in history or management theories. Even if there are positions that require such knowledge, they are always given to those who are far older than myself. So what am I supposed to do? Continue to barely survive by being one of many seamstresses? Keep being pushed around by any person more powerful or with higher social connections? Leaving there would only take me back to the same position. It won't ever change that way.
She drops her head into her hands and sobs. My heart aches as I kneel beside her, watching her shuddering form. I feel helpless, but what can I do? These problems are much different from what I may have dealt with. Eventually, Margaret seems to pull herself together.
No, I was tired of accepting those options. Sinlos was my only chance. Only now do I realize how ridiculous a notion that is. Anyone who comes to this lake with a sense of hope will surely have it crushed.
Are you saying you wanted to become a guide?
Yes. Laugh at my ambition if you wish. People may fear the current guide and may even blame him for the people he cannot save. But at least he has respect. Not only that, the heads of the area give him enough support to live a comfortable life. From all I'd gathered about the lake, being strong or good with a weapon didn't matter a lick. The most important qualities for a guide were being observant and shrewd, and being able to look past the struggles of someone else. But how wrong I was!
Her voice rises.
I haven't the slightest ability to deal with sinking bridges and confrontations with those horrible monsters. And even though I thought I'd lost all ability to care about the troubles of others, I still feel awful about what happened earlier. I haven't a chance of making it as a guide, which means I have no hope anywhere.
She covers her face once more and resumes her cries. Hesitantly, I reach out and place my hand on her shoulder. Surprisingly, she doesn't shake it off. We sit quietly like that for several moments.
You don't have to be a guide. Once this is over, you never have to come back here. There has to be something else out there for you. And if something does not yet exist, then we can create it ourselves.
Margaret chortles a bit.
What a silly idea. But if I did have to choose between returning to the normal world or staying here, I'd rather go back home.
I squeeze her shoulders, and she at last looks up at me, the tears gone from her eyes.
Thank you for sharing this with me.
Thank you for listening. You have an unexpectedly soft heart.
She must have noticed the slight twinge in my face.
That isn't a bad thing, Kika.
I look away. eyes towards the ground.
I know it can hurt to care, but it also lets you lessen the pain of others. I think it would be much better if everyone cared a little bit more, rather than less.
I feel tears forming in my eyes now as I smile back at Margaret.
Thank you.
Margaret returns my look. I take a seat on the root beside her for a time. We sit in silence, simply being there for one another. Eventually, I turn towards her.
Perhaps we should go check how everything is on the island.
Margaret nods.
That seems like a fair thing to do. We can't keep sitting here forever, unfortunately. I'll come with you.
Are you sure you'll be alright without your glasses? There are a lot of places to catch your foot or dress on.
Margaret laughs lightly.
I'm sure I'll be fine.
Arm! She sighs softly and chides me teasingly.
Really, you are too much.
She then accepts. Together we head towards the interior of the island. Myra and I head through the wooded part of the island. There isn't anything that could be called a path, but we managed to pick our way through the bush quite well. Through a thinner strand of trees, we briefly catch sight of the guide sitting on one of the beaches. He seems fine, but even though I'm sure he's turned his head towards me, he makes no show of acknowledging us. We move on and eventually find Bamele in Jagged Clearing, laying against a tree. He's already noticed us and looking our way, smiling. As we approach, I pick up upon the sadness behind his jovial expression.
How are you faring? Any problems?
Everything is fine. We came to check on you.
How kind. I've calmed down since then.
I'm glad to hear that. Is there any way I can help or anything you'd like to say?
He raises an eyebrow at that, still grinning.
I didn't expect to see you so worried about me, Kika.
I had to force myself not to avert my eyes at that comment, embarrassment flowing into me.
You ought to not question it, you know. Simply be thankful for all her thoughtfulness.
He nods and chuckles heartily.
Right.
I feel warmth that turns my lips into a shy smile. Margaret nods approvingly. Melanie glances between Margaret and I, smiling coyly over the exchange. His amusement doesn't last, however. Instead, he throws his arms out wider with a sour expression.
Have you seen the guide?
Melanie is clearly asking out of a sense of obligation. Makes no secret that he's not pleased to be discussing the guide. I nod in response.
I saw him earlier. He is the same as always.
Good, good. In that case, I'm going to stretch my legs for a bit. I feel stiff from standing in one place for so long.
Wait, I can't help but wonder if it's the best idea to keep splitting up and wandering off. We've all had time to ourselves to think. I believe we should stay together now.
She has a point. We can't be sure how safe this island truly is.
Well, I've had my fair share of being difficult lately. I can accept that if you feel so strongly about it. I'd still like to take a walk, if you two don't mind joining me.
We don't have much time to contemplate the offer before he chimes in once more.
I could also go for a nap.
I smile softly at his attempts to be accommodating to us, despite our sudden intrusion. Would not mind walking. Melanie grins and glances over at Margaret.
What do you think?
I am the one who wanted us to stick together. I'm not going to put a wedge in the plan. I'll come along.
Glad to hear it.
The three of us begin walking, conversating lightly as we meander the island. As we walk, I can feel my worries easing into a light burden. I peek over at Bamele and Margaret, noticing the brightness in their eyes, the cheer in their voices, and knowing they feel the same. After all, the horror of the night, finally we have a reprieve. Mally speaks animatedly as he finishes another one of his tales.
So he tries to force his way into that old barn by kicking the door open. His foot ends up going right on through the wood and gets stuck.
Margaret and I exchanged looks, sharing an unspoken amusement.
I'm curious, this fellow guard you've been speaking of wouldn't happen to be a stand-in for yourself, would he?
He certainly wouldn't. Must you always doubt my word?
Mallory playfully feigns distress while Margaret laughs.
Yes, Kika's far too polite, so someone has to keep you from getting too big-headed.
Fine, fair enough.
I love that.
But what if I told you the fellow guard in my story was actually Kika?
Then I'd have to tease her for committing a blunder that seems like one you would make, of course.
You're a harsh one, Margaret. I'm not safe from your verbal lashings no matter what I say.
You make it much too easy for me.
Margaret grinning, full of mirth, she looks towards me.
Kika, you aren't upset by that, are you?
Her face grows with concern. She's probably questioning if she's taken it too far by targeting me. I smile warmly and shake my head.
I'm glad to be included.
Margaret immediately looks relieved, returning to her joking, snobbish expression. This familiar exchange with her has made me brave. I take a deep breath.
And in all fairness, I'd also have to give myself a difficult time if I made a mistake befitting Bemele.
I glanced between Bemele and Margaret, nervously trying to gauge their reactions to my attempt at adding to the conversation. After a moment, they both start to smirk, and Bemele lets out a hearty laugh.
I can't believe I've been betrayed this way, after all we've been through.
Bemele, don't kid yourself. You are a little bit of a bumbling oaf and idiot sometimes. And sometimes we have to call you out. You know? If it's nothing against you personally. It's just, have to put you in your place every so often. Can't let your ego get too big. Margaret smoothly applauds my efforts. I smile timidly at their reaction.
You've come so far, Kika.
Margaret gazes at me fondly. Gaze back. I catch Margaret's eyes and we spend a moment sharing a gentle connection. For a brief moment, all of the troublesome circumstances seem to float away from our minds, and we enjoy each other's company. I wish I could go on for so much longer, but it's only a while later that I have to speak up.
We really should rest before nightfall.
I'm fine with that idea.
All right.
Melia leads us over to the area where the guide mentioned we're going to meet. Margaret and I sit together. She lightly rests her head against my shoulder. The three of us quietly wait for the guide's arrival, occasionally chatting with one another as we rest. The sky turns orange and the sunset comes upon us. As the color seems to drain from the world, being consumed by fog, the guide makes his appearance.
It's almost time.
I nod and feel myself grow tense. We truly are about to return to those bridges. All of us wait in an uncomfortable silence until night falls. We silently stand as one, forming a vigil of sorts. Our remaining lanterns illuminate the dark, prepared for tonight's journey. And yet, the way forward does not appear. The bridges haven't risen from the depths. I glance to my side as the guide doesn't look at all pleased. The corners of his mouth have a harsh bent as he briefly loses himself to heavy thoughts.
We must go to the shore.
He doesn't offer an explanation for why. Instead, he goes on without us. I follow after the guide, my forehead creasing with swelling worry. Behind me, I hear Bemele and Margaret's unsure footsteps. The four of us press onto the shore. The dark water laps at the edge of the sand, and, as expected, the maze is still hidden beneath the surface. The guide grips his staff tighter, still his knuckles turning ghostly white. He sucks in a breath of air, like he is about to speak, but hesitates. We stare at him expectantly. After a moment more, the guide is fed up with waiting.
The bridges are late. If they don't arrive as soon as darkness falls, there's no telling exactly how long it will be before they do.
Mele's face turns immediately sour, and he isn't able to stay silent about his feelings.
So we're going to waste our time standing idly by. There's hardly enough time to make the trip as it is.
Complaining won't make these bridges come any sooner, though I sympathize with your frustrations. The wait had already been tense as it was. Not knowing how much longer it will last makes it that much more dreadful.
Time is by far the least of our worries. On the bridges we are constantly moving, which makes it easier to avoid the prowlers. However, this island does not offer that luxury. We're trapped here.
My body goes rigid as his words sink in.
More importantly, the bridges are raised above the waters. Nixie have difficulties pulling themselves up onto the bridges. The soft sloping of the shore will allow far more prowlers to drag themselves towards us. Not all will be as dangerous as the ones we've encountered thus far. However, we could easily be overwhelmed.
A pit forms deep in my stomach. I stare at him aghast. I had no idea the situation was that dire. I glance from the waterline to the trees. What am I looking for? I don't know. A sign of what might be to come, perhaps.
I wonder if those fires had anything to do with this.
Mele's words are biting as he wonders aloud. The guide answers Bamele firmly, wanting to put an end to his speculation.
No. Whatever magic controlling the bridges is inconsistent. Humans haven't found a way to impact it. We can only do temporary physical damage to the boards.
Mele is still displeased. Margaret moves into discussion. Her mood is rapidly declining as well.
Then what should we do? We shouldn't stay on the shore if the monsters could be coming towards us at any moment.
The guide closes his eyes and suddenly looks very worn down.
Staying in the center of the island is the safest option. However, there's the risk that we may not be able to reach the bridges when they do rise. Prowlers could have taken full control of the shore by then. Remaining here with our lanterns will ensure the prowlers cannot move freely.
My brow involuntarily knits together. I don't like the sound of taking additional risk in an area that is already so dangerous, but our options are thin.
I will not be kept on this island for another day, so the shore is where I will be. You may wait at the edge of the forest, or even at the center of the island if you fear being attacked. If the prowlers come between us and you fail to make it to the bridges, I will leave you behind.
Mele spits hatefully under his breath.
Of course you would.
True generosity is not something I would expect from the guide, but that is not the conversation we need to have at this moment. The guide has made his decision and we must make ours.
If you were staying by the shore, perhaps I could be positioned somewhat further back from you, and then the others could stay further back still. That would keep us safer without having any major gaps of darkness between us and the shore.
Good suggestion, Kika.
I'd say that's likely our best option, and we don't have time to come up with any other way regardless.
Settled on the matter, the three of us begin to move away from the guide. He pays little attention to us, instead silently fixing his eyes on the water. I take a place in the middle of the shore, while Bamele and Margaret hover close to the island's core on the line between dirt and sand. After getting a sense of where they are, I turn my gaze ahead. At first, I think I'm being fooled by the fog. There are several white dots playing along the edge of the water. Dark globs begin to surface, and I see them for what they are. Eyes. So many white, dribbling eyes gleaming sharply against their pitch-black bodies as Nixie bob up and down. They surface and disappear in a loop, each time more sets of eyes and closer, surveying us more intently. Then they cackle. The sound is atrocious gurgling, and then turns high-pitched as they seem to take full stock of us. The light in their eyes somehow seemed brighter as the first of the Nixie dig their claws into the sand and began dragging themselves upon the shore. I plant my feet firmer. A shrill shriek pierces the air, accompanied by a telltale hiss. I whip my head back towards the sound, only to be greeted by coal-black darkness. I cry out desperately into the void where Margaret and Bamele stood.
What happened?
There's silence, then the best sound possible. Margaret's voice replies, albeit shakily.
There was a prowler in the woods. I didn't notice it until it was already too close to me. I dropped my lantern when I saw it. The light was enough to drive it away, but now it's gone. Shattered.
I swerve my head back to make sure the shore is still clear before I sprint over to release them from the darkness with my own light. Margaret stares down to the ground dejectedly when I arrive. Mele has his hand placed on her shoulder.
I didn't see the thing either. The monster blended in far too well with the dark, crooked trees of this place.
He gives me a sad smile as I approach the two closer.
We can make a small fire for light.
Margaret sniffles loudly.
That may work for now, but what will we do once we're back on the bridges?
We will manage.
I speak firmly, trying to assure her I can't even guess how effective the attempt was. Mameli begins to gather dry twigs, stones, and grass to craft a fire with. Margaret moves to help him, though she still looks terribly upset. I feel awful. It wasn't her fault. We dig a few inches down in the sand soil before making an edging with the rocks to stop fire from giving us a repeat of last night. I layer the fuel quickly and light the match at the base of the pit. Margaret starts the fire with Mameli feeding it twigs. In twigs, not it twigs. With that, we're going to end this one there. Next time we come back, we'll find out how this goes. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, hit like. That way I know you're enjoying the content I'm making. Hit subscribe. That way YouTube brings you back. Here's what happens next. I won't take up any more of your time. Have a good day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.